The scent hits me first overripe, decaying, with a kind of sharpness that reminds you of something long gone bad. Not in the small way, like a meal left out overnight, but something that shouldn't exist anymore, something forced to linger beyond its time. I take a deep breath, hoping maybe that familiarity will help, but it only makes it worse. The air clings too closely, damp and heavy, and I find myself pulling my collar up instinctively, as if it can keep the smell out. I know it won't. It's quiet here, unnaturally so. Out in the open, you'd expect noise, even if it's just the faint hum of wind against the trees. But here, there's nothing. Just me and this strange silence, a quiet so deep it feels like it might swallow sound whole. And this place? It's unlike anything I'd expected to see. For years, the rumors had trickled down from the outer systems, stories of a garden world humanity had made, a place so fertile it was supposedly like nothing else in the galaxy. A paradise, some called it. Others said it was a sanctuary, a testament to the greatness of human ingenuity. But standing here now, staring out over what stretches before me, I know that none of those people could have ever seen this place. Because this is not paradise. Rows and rows of strange, towering plants line my path, their trunks twisted and too dark to look natural. Each one seems to lean, almost curving inwards as if following me, tracking my movements as I walk through. It's hard to say if they're moving, or if it's just my imagination, but I can't shake the sensation of 1,000 silent eyes on me, lurking just out of sight. I keep my pace steady, slow, methodical. Don't give it anything to react to, I think to myself, as if that will make any difference. But out here, alone and surrounded by this bizarre landscape, routine is my only comfort. That and the faint, almost imperceptible hum from the small, multi-tool clipped to my belt, a little piece of human tech that feels almost like a lifeline in the dark. They sent me here alone, said that's all that was needed, one person to survey the land and report back. Maybe they didn't want to risk more, or maybe they just didn't know what they were sending me into. Either way, as I step further into the garden, I can feel a knot tightening in my stomach. There's something here, something they couldn't have seen from orbit, something lurking just beneath the surface. It takes only a few steps more before I realize that the ground beneath my feet isn't solid. It's soft, almost giving with each step, like walking on some kind of thick, spongy moss. But when I glance down, I see nothing green or soft, just dark, damp soil, with the occasional streak of crimson that glistens in the dim light. I don't like the look of it, but moving forward feels like the only option. I'd rather not linger. The path opens up into a small clearing, and I stop, taking in the sight. Around me, the plants grow taller, their twisted forms closing in like a cage. And there, in the center of it all, lies something so strange it pulls me out of my daze. It's a flower, if you could call it that. Massive, with petals as thick as my arm, a sickly white that almost glows. And at its core, something pulses, a steady, rhythmic beat, like a heart. I can't help but stare, feeling drawn in, and it takes everything in me to pull my gaze away. There's something fundamentally wrong here, something that goes against every instinct I have. But I have a job to do, and turning back without answers isn't an option. As I circle the clearing, taking careful, measured steps, the silence shifts. It's subtle at first, a faint murmur that feels more like a trick of the mind than anything real. But as I strain to listen, it grows louder, taking shape until it becomes unmistakable. A whisper? Faint, fragmented, but they're welcome home. The words don't make sense. They're too soft to be real, too disjointed to have come from any single source. But I know what I heard, and the hairs on the back of my neck prick as I feel that same inexplicable gaze on me, stronger now, closer. I grip the multi-tool at my belt, more for comfort than anything else. The whispers fade, slipping back into the silence, but the unease they leave behind doesn't. I press forward, trying to keep my focus on the mission. Just survey, document, and return. That's all I have to do. But the garden doesn't make it easy. Every step feels heavier, the air thickening with a kind of oppressive weight that's hard to describe. It's as if the whole place is waiting, watching, each moment stretched and coiled, ready to snap. And the plants, they're everywhere now, closing in with their strange, twisted forms. each one larger and more contorted than the last. I feel like I'm being funneled somewhere, led down a path I didn't choose. And then I see it. A figure, barely visible in the gloom, standing just beyond the edge of the path. It's human, or at least it looks human, but there's something off. The way it stands, too still, too rigid, and its eyes, they don't blink, don't move, just stare straight ahead with a kind of vacant emptiness that chills me to the bone. I hesitate, feeling my heart race, but something compels me forward, as if drawn by some unseen force. My steps echo in the silence, each one sounding louder than the last until I'm close enough to make out the details. It's a mannequin, I realize, or at least something like one. A hollow, lifeless shell, clothed in old, worn fabric that looks like it might have once been human. And on its chest, a single word is scrawled in a strange, almost childlike script. Remember. I take a step back, the shock of it all hitting me like a physical blow. This isn't right. None of this is right. But before I can react, the whispers return, louder now, pressing in from all sides. Remember, home, remember. The word twists in my mind, growing louder, filling my thoughts until it's all I can hear. And then, just as suddenly as they came, the whispers stop, leaving me alone in the silence once more. I stagger back, feeling disoriented, my mind racing to make sense of it all. But nothing fits. Nothing makes sense here. The garden, the figure, the whispers, it all feels like some kind of elaborate trap, something designed to pull me in, to keep me here. But I'm not giving in. I take a deep breath, grounding myself, focusing on the mission. This place might be twisted, unnatural, but I won't let it control me. Not now, not ever. I turn, forcing myself to move forward, each step feeling like a test of will. The garden seems to resist, the path growing narrower, the plants pressing in, but I push on, determined to find a way out. And as I walk, I can't shake the feeling that something is watching, waiting, just beyond the edge of my vision. The silence here is a predator. It creeps, lingering in the spaces where noise should live. Even the faint hum of my multi-tool feels dampened, as though the air itself is swallowing sound before it can escape. I've heard of places like this, worlds that echo with the kind of silence that speaks louder than screams. But nothing could have prepared me for this. I keep my pace steady, my eyes scanning every shadow, every flicker of movement in the dim light. Each step feels like an intrusion, a violation of some unspoken boundary. This place was never meant for us. As I push further into the depths of the garden, the terrain shifts, the soft ground beneath me giving way to something harder, something that feels constructed. I look down to find faint patterns etched into the soil, spirals and curves that weave together like the roots of an ancient tree. They're strange, too precise to be natural, yet too weathered to be recent. Whatever they are, they seem to pulse, faintly, almost as if they're alive. I force myself to keep moving, trying to ignore the knot forming in my gut. But the farther I go, the harder it becomes to shake the feeling that I'm being watched. The plants, once looming and menacing, now seem almost familiar, their twisted forms leaning in as if sharing some dark secret. They seem to pulse in unison with the patterns underfoot, a slow, deliberate rhythm that fills the air with an oppressive weight. And then, just when I think I might be losing my mind, I hear it again, a whisper, faint and distant, slipping through the silence like a cold breeze. "Why have you come?" The voice is soft, almost childlike, but there's an edge to it, something dark and ancient lurking beneath the surface. I glance around, my heart racing, but there's no one there. Just the plants, the patterns, and the silence. I swallow hard, forcing down the rising panic. "I'm here to survey the land," I say, my voice barely a whisper, "to see if it's safe." The words feel hollow, even as I say them. Nothing about this place feels safe, but it's all I have to hold on to. The voice fades, leaving me alone in the silence once more. But the feeling lingers, a cold, creeping dread that seeps into my bones. I don't know what this place is, or why it feels so wrong. But I know one thing for certain. This is not the garden humanity had intended. I press on, my steps growing slower, more cautious. Every instinct screams at me to turn back, to leave this place and never return. But I can't. Not yet. There's something here, something buried beneath the surface, and I need to find it. The path narrows, the twisted plants closing in on all sides until I'm forced to duck and weave to avoid their grasping branches. The air grows thicker, almost suffocating, and the smell, God, that smell is stronger now, filling my lungs with each ragged breath. And then I see it. A structure, barely visible through the dense foliage. It's old, crumbling, its surface covered in thick layers of moss and vines. But it's unmistakably human. The metal glints faintly in the dim light, a reminder of the world I left behind. I approach cautiously, my eyes scanning every shadow, every flicker of movement. As I reach the edge of the structure, I notice something etched into the metal, a series of numbers and letters, faded but still legible. I trace my fingers over the letters, feeling a strange sense of familiarity. Project Eden, I whisper, the words heavy on my tongue. I'd heard of Project Eden, of course. It was one of humanity's most ambitious undertakings, an attempt to terraform a world into a paradise, a haven for future generations. But it had been abandoned years ago, deemed a failure after the project went dark. No one knew what had gone wrong, only that the entire crew had vanished without a trace. And now, standing here, I feel a chill run down my spine. This is what they left behind. This nightmare. I take a step back, the weight of the realization settling over me like a shroud. This isn't just a garden, it's a graveyard, a monument to humanity's hubris, to our belief that we could bend nature to our will. The silence deepens, pressing in from all sides, and I feel a sudden urge to run, to leave this place and never look back. But before I can move, the whispers return, louder now, filling the air with 1,000 overlapping voices. Welcome, home. The words echo through the silence, a haunting chorus that fills me with a sense of dread. I clutch the multi-tool at my side, my only weapon against the unknown, and take a deep breath. Whatever this place is, it's watching me, waiting for me to make a move. And I can't shake the feeling that it knows more about me than I'd care to admit. I force myself to keep moving, my steps slow and deliberate. Each step feels like a gamble, a test of will against the forces that lurk in the shadows. I can feel them, watching, waiting, their gaze pressing down on me like a weight I can't shake. As I move deeper into the structure, the whispers grow louder, more insistent. They echo off the walls, filling the air with a sense of urgency, a desperation that seeps into my bones. Remember, remember. The word pulses in my mind, a mantra that grows louder with each step. I don't know what it means or why it feels so important, but I can't ignore it. There's something here, something buried beneath the layers of moss and decay, something that holds the key to understanding this place. I reach the center of the structure, a small, circular room lined with screens and control panels. Most of them are shattered, their surfaces covered in dust and grime. But one screen flickers to life as I approach, its faint glow casting eerie shadows across the room. I hesitate, my hand hovering over the control panel, but curiosity wins out. I press a button, and the screen crackles, displaying a series of photos of the garden, taken from orbit, each one showing a lush, vibrant world, a paradise unlike anything I've ever seen. But as the images scroll by, they start to change. The plants grow darker, their twisted forms more pronounced, until the garden is barely recognizable. And then, finally, I see it, a single, haunting image that fills the screen, a photo of the clearing I'd seen earlier, with the massive, pulsing flower at its center. And standing beside it, staring into the camera with empty, lifeless eyes, is a figure dressed in the same worn fabric as the mannequin I'd seen before. I stumble back, the realization hitting me like a punch to the gut. This place, it's alive. It's not just a garden, it's a predator. A living, breathing entity that's consumed everything in its path. And now, it's set its sights on me. The whispers grow louder, filling the air with a cacophony of voices, each one more desperate than the last. Remember, remember. I don't know what it means, but I can't ignore it. There's something here, something I need to understand before it's too late. I take a deep breath, steeling myself against the fear that threatens to consume me, and step forward. The whispers fade, leaving me alone in the silence once more. But this time, it feels different. This time, I'm not just an intruder. I'm a part of this place, bound to it in ways I can't fully comprehend. I press on, my steps slow and deliberate, each one bringing me closer to the truth that lies hidden in the heart of this nightmare. And as I walk, I can't shake the feeling that I'm being watched, that something is following me, waiting for the right moment to strike. But I won't run. Not yet. Not until I find what I came here for. The room grows colder, a chill seeping up through the floor and wrapping around me like a fog. I stand alone in the circle of dim light cast by the flickering screen, the image of that twisted garden etched into my mind. The figure empty-eyed, haunting is gone, but the sense of dread it left behind lingers, clinging to the air like the scent of decay. The whispers return, softer this time, like distant echoes reverberating through an empty cave. Remember, they murmur, a sound that's more felt than heard, crawling under my skin and into my bones. "Who are you?" I ask, my voice barely a whisper. It's absurd, really, talking to the empty air. But here, in this place where nothing feels quite real, it's the only thing I can think to do. The silence deepens, thick and suffocating, and then, almost reluctantly, a reply surfaces from the darkness. "We are the roots, the seeds of humanity's ambition." The voice drifts, blending with the shadows around me. "This was your creation, your Eden, and now it is ours." I swallow hard, the weight of the words settling over me. Project Eden, what was meant to be humanity's paradise, a garden of life, had become something else entirely, a place where life itself had turned monstrous, twisted into a mockery of what it was meant to be. But why, I ask, my voice trembling. Why did it change? For a moment, the silence stretches, taut and fragile. Then, the whispers return, softer, as though coming from far away. Change is inevitable. You came here, humans, bringing your technology, your ambitions, your need to shape the world to fit your vision. You tried to force life to bend to your will, and it fought back. A shiver runs through me. The plants, the twisted forms, the sense of something lurking just beneath the surface, it all makes a dark, twisted kind of sense. Life, real life, doesn't like to be controlled. And when humans tried to remake this world, to twist it into something else, it twisted back. What happened to them, I ask, my voice barely a whisper. The crew of Project Eden. There's a pause, a silence so deep it feels like the whole world is holding its breath. Then, slowly, the answer comes, drifting through the darkness like a chill breeze. They became part of us, part of the garden. The words send a wave of nausea through me. The crew, the scientists, the engineers gone, swallowed up by the very world they tried to create. And now, they were part of this place, woven into the fabric of the twisted garden, a dark and terrible legacy of humanity's hubris. I take a shaky step back, my heart pounding. I need to leave, to get out of this place before it consumes me, too. But even as the thought crosses my mind, a strange sense of calm settles over me. It's as though the garden itself is speaking to me, wrapping around me like a dark embrace. "Why leave?" the whispers murmur, soft and seductive. "You are one of us now." I shake my head, fighting against the pull, the strange, almost hypnotic draw of the garden. I'm not one of you. But even as I say the words, I can feel the garden pressing in, filling the air with a heavy, sickly sweet scent that makes my head spin. The plants seem to move closer, their twisted forms shifting in the dim light, reaching out with tendrils that seem almost eager. I stumble back, my hands fumbling for the multi-tool at my side. I don't know what I'm hoping to do with it, cut my way out, maybe, or at least hold them off long enough to escape. But even as I grip the tool, a sense of futility washes over me. This place is alive, ancient and powerful, and I am nothing more than an intruder, a trespasser in a world that does not welcome me. The whispers grow louder, filling the air with a strange, melodic hum that seems to vibrate through my bones. Join us, be a part of something greater, something eternal. I grit my teeth, forcing myself to focus, to push through the fog of dread that threatens to overwhelm me. "No," I say, my voice shaking but determined. "I didn't come here to become part of you. I came here to understand." The words hang in the air, a fragile defiance in the face of something vast and unknowable. And for a moment, the garden seems to pause, as though considering my words. The whispers fade, leaving only silence, a heavy, expectant silence that presses down on me like a weight. And then, slowly, the plants begin to shift, parting to reveal a narrow path leading deeper into the darkness. It's an invitation, a challenge, a test of my resolve. I take a deep breath, steeling myself, and step forward, the weight of the garden's gaze pressing down on me with each step. The path twists and turns, winding through the dense foliage, leading me deeper into the heart of the garden. The air grows colder, the silence more oppressive, and the faint glow of the screen behind me fades into darkness. But I keep going, driven by a strange, unexplainable need to reach the center, to understand the truth that lies hidden in the shadows. At last, I reach a clearing, a small, circular space surrounded by towering plants that seem to pulse with a faint, sickly glow. In the center of the clearing stands a figure, motionless and silent, its form barely visible in the dim light. Its human, no, almost human, its features twisted and distorted, its skin pale and translucent, like the petals of a flower left too long in the sun. I approach cautiously, my heart pounding, and the figure turns to face me, its empty eyes staring into mine with a cold, unblinking gaze. It doesn't speak, but I can feel its presence, a dark, oppressive weight that fills the air with a sense of dread. "You are human," it says, its voice a hollow echo that seems to come from somewhere deep within the earth. "You came here, bringing your ambitions, your dreams, and now, you are part of this place." I take a step back, the weight of its gaze pressing down on me like a physical force. "I didn't come here to join you," I say, my voice barely a whisper. "I came here to understand." The figure tilts its head, a strange, almost curious expression crossing its face. "Understanding is irrelevant. You are here, and that is enough. You will be part of the garden, as all who come here must be." I feel a surge of anger, a fierce defiance that pushes back against the weight of its presence. "No," I say, my voice stronger this time. "I am not one of you. I am human, and I will not be consumed by this place." The figure's expression shifts, a flicker of something almost like recognition, or perhaps even respect. But it fades quickly, replaced by the cold, empty gaze of something ancient and unfeeling. "Then leave," it says, its voice a low, rumbling growl that seems to shake the ground beneath me. "But know this, the garden is eternal. It will consume all who come here, all who seek to bend it to their will. You may leave, but you will carry us with you, always." The words echo in my mind as I turn and stumble back down the path, my steps quickening as the oppressive silence presses in around me. The plants seem to reach for me, their twisted forms shifting and writhing in the dim light. But I push through, driven by a desperate need to escape. As I reach the edge of the clearing, I glance back one last time, my gaze meeting the figure's empty eyes. And in that moment, I understand. This place, it's not just a garden. It's a mirror, a reflection of humanity's darkest impulses, our desire to control, to shape, to consume, and in the end, it will consume us all. I turn and run, the whispers fading behind me, leaving only the silence, a heavy, oppressive silence that fills the air with a sense of dread. But even as I escape the garden, I can feel its presence lingering, a dark, inescapable shadow that will haunt me, always. The journey back to the ship feels like a blur. I stagger through the twisted landscape, my thoughts racing, my heart pounding. The whispers follow me, soft and insistent, pressing in from all sides as though the garden itself is unwilling to let me go. By the time I reach the ship, I'm drenched in sweat, my hands shaking as I fumble with the door controls. The silence inside the ship is a relief, a stark contrast to the oppressive weight of the garden. But even here, safe within these metal walls, I can't shake the feeling that something has followed me, something dark and insidious that clings to my thoughts like a shadow. I collapse into the pilot's seat, my mind a chaotic mess of fear, anger, and a strange, nagging sense of loss. The garden, the twisted, haunted place I'd barely escaped from, was more than just a nightmare. It was a warning, a dark reflection of what humanity could become if we continued down this path. I reach for the comms panel, my fingers hovering over the controls. Part of me wants to call for help, to send out a warning, to tell the others what I've seen. But what would I even say? How could I explain the horror, the darkness, the sense of inevitability that hangs over that place like a shroud? Instead, I stare out at the landscape beyond the viewport, the twisted forms of the garden visible in the distance, a dark blot on the horizon. The words of the figure echo in my mind, a haunting reminder of what I'd left behind. You will carry us with you, always. I take a deep, shuddering breath, trying to steady myself. The garden may be behind me, but its shadow still lingers, a constant, nagging presence that fills the air with a sense of dread. It's as though the very essence of the place has seeped into my bones, leaving me marked, tainted by the darkness that dwells within. My gaze drifts to the control panel, to the blinking lights and humming machinery that surround me. This is supposed to be my sanctuary, my refuge from the horrors outside. But even here, I can feel the garden's presence, a silent, watchful thing that waits, lurking just beyond the edges of my consciousness. I shake my head, forcing myself to focus. I need to leave, to put as much distance as possible between myself and that cursed place. But as I reach for the controls, a strange, almost instinctive hesitation stops me. The garden, it's a living thing, a dark and terrible reflection of humanity's ambition, our desire to reshape the universe in our image. But it's also a creation, a twisted, perverse mirror of everything we are, and everything we could become. The thought sends a shiver down my spine. If I leave, if I abandon this place, what will become of it? Will it continue to grow, to spread, to consume everything in its path? Or will it simply wait, lurking in the shadows, a silent reminder of humanity's darkest impulses? I glance back at the garden, the twisted forms of the plants silhouetted against the distant horizon. The figure's words echo in my mind, a dark, haunting refrain that fills the air with a sense of dread. You may leave, but you will carry us with you, always. The words feel like a challenge, a dark and terrible promise that leaves me with a sense of unease. I could leave, escape the garden's grasp, put as much distance as possible between myself and that cursed place. But even as the thought crosses my mind, a strange sense of resolve settles over me, a fierce determination that burns in my chest. I can't leave. Not yet. Not without understanding the truth, the dark and terrible secret that lies at the heart of this place. With a deep breath, I stand and head back toward the airlock, my footsteps echoing in the silence. The ship's interior feels cold, sterile, a stark contrast to the living, breathing nightmare that waits outside. But even here, I can feel the garden's presence, a silent, watchful thing that waits, lurking just beyond the edges of my consciousness. I step outside, the chill of the air sending a shiver through me. The garden stretches out before me, a twisted, tangled mass of darkness and decay. The plants seem to shift, to move, their forms writhing in the dim light as though eager to consume me, to drag me back into the heart of their twisted world. But I don't hesitate. I take a step forward, then another, my gaze fixed on the distant horizon, on the dark, pulsing heart of the garden that waits, a silent, watchful thing that calls to me, drawing me deeper into its embrace. The whispers return, soft and insistent, filling the air with a strange, almost melodic hum. They drift around me, wrapping me in a dark embrace, a haunting lullaby that seems to seep into my bones, filling me with a sense of dread, of inevitability. Come, they murmur, their voices soft and seductive, a dark, insistent pull that draws me forward, deeper into the heart of the garden. Join us, become one with the garden, become part of something greater. The words send a shiver through me, but I don't falter. I keep moving, my steps steady, determined. The darkness presses in around me, the plants shifting and writhing, their twisted forms reaching out, eager, hungry. But I push through, driven by a fierce, unyielding resolve. I reach the heart of the garden, a small, circular clearing surrounded by towering plants that seem to pulse with a faint, sickly glow. The figure stands in the center, its empty eyes staring into mine, its form barely visible in the dim light. "You returned," it says, its voice a hollow echo that drifts through the darkness. "Why?" I take a deep breath, my gaze steady, unflinching. "I came here to understand," I say, my voice strong, determined. "I came here to find the truth." The figure tilts its head, a strange, almost curious expression crossing its face. "The truth," it murmurs, its voice soft, almost wistful. "The truth is, you already know." The words send a wave of cold dread through me, but I don't back down. "Then show me," I say, my voice barely a whisper. "Show me the truth." The figure stares at me for a long, silent moment, its empty eyes cold and unfeeling. Then, slowly, it raises its hand, its fingers curling into a fist. The darkness around us deepens, the whispers growing louder, filling the air with a strange, almost hypnotic hum. And then, suddenly, the darkness fades, replaced by a blinding light, a searing, painful brightness that burns into my mind, filling my vision with a kaleidoscope of colors, of images, of memories. I see the garden, twisted and dark, a monstrous reflection of humanity's ambition. I see the crew, their forms twisted, consumed by the very life they sought to create. And I see myself, standing at the edge of the darkness, a silent witness to the horrors that lie within. The light fades, leaving me gasping, my mind reeling from the onslaught of images, of memories. I stagger back, my hands clutching at my head, my heart pounding as the truth settles over me, heavy and suffocating. The garden, it's not just a place. It's a warning, a dark and terrible reminder of what humanity could become if we continue down this path. It's a mirror, a reflection of our darkest impulses, our desire to control, to consume, to reshape the universe in our image. And in the end, it will consume us all. The figure watches me, its empty eyes cold and unfeeling. "Now you understand," it says, its voice soft, almost pitying. "Now you see the truth." I stare at it, my heart pounding, my mind racing. The garden, the twisted, haunted place I'd barely escaped from, was more than just a nightmare. It was a mirror, a dark, terrible reflection of everything we are, and everything we could become. I take a deep breath, my gaze steady, unflinching. "I understand," I say, my voice strong, determined. "And I will not let it happen." The figure tilts its head, a strange, almost curious expression crossing its face. "Then go," it says, its voice a low, rumbling growl that seems to shake the ground beneath me. "But remember, the garden is eternal, and it will consume all who come here, all who seek to bend it to their will." The words echo in my mind as I turn and stumble back down the path, my steps quickening as the oppressive silence presses in around me. Leaving the garden should have felt like escape, a breath of fresh air, a release from the suffocating grip of that twisted nightmare. But as the distance grew, I only felt the grip tighten, a silent claw that reached out from the heart of the garden, clinging to me. I crossed the threshold of twisted vines and warped shadows, feeling their hungry gazes as I re-entered the relative calm of the planet's barren landscape. My mind, though, felt tangled in roots I couldn't see. Once back at the ship, I found myself sitting in silence, hands still trembling. The garden's murmur was gone, but the echoes of its warnings, its promises, refused to fade. I had seen the truth buried in that dark, unnatural place, a reflection of humanity, a mirror held up to our deepest desires and fears. The figure's words haunted me. The garden is eternal, and it will consume all who come here. It felt like a prophecy, like some terrible fate hanging over not only me, but anyone who ever dared to reach beyond their grasp. I'd come here for answers, but all I had were fragments, flashes of a horror that seemed designed to live and grow long after I'd escaped its grasp. The question now was, what would I do with that knowledge? Hours passed. The planet's weak, hazy sunlight had faded, casting the landscape in darkness, the same color as the garden's twisted heart. I stood by the viewport, watching the barren plains stretch out before me, a quiet wasteland. And yet, even here, miles away from that hellish place, I felt its presence, like a shadow flickering at the edge of my vision. Sleep was a distant thought. I knew it wouldn't come easy, not with my mind replaying the visions I'd seen, the faces of the crew twisted into something monstrous, unnatural. But it wasn't just them. It was humanity, reaching out, pushing forward, and what we were willing to sacrifice along the way. What I'd seen in the garden wasn't just a warning. It was a blueprint of a possible future, of what lay in store for us if we continued our relentless expansion into the unknown. My mind spun with possibilities, with fears I hadn't known I was capable of holding. And then, as if to confirm my darkest thoughts, a soft, almost imperceptible whisper reached me. A voice drifting through the silence, faint but unmistakable. "You cannot leave us behind." I froze, breath caught in my throat. The whisper was soft, almost soothing, but its meaning sent a chill through me. I looked around, half expecting to see something lurking in the shadows of the ship, some remnant of the garden's dark power. But there was nothing, only the empty, sterile confines of my ship. But I knew that the garden wasn't finished with me. In the following days, I tried to focus on the mission, to bury myself in the routines and tasks that had once given me purpose. But every time I tried to work, I felt the weight of the garden pressing down on me, its dark promises seeping into my thoughts, whispering in the quiet moments. Each night, I would lie awake, staring at the ceiling, feeling as though the walls were closing in. And in the quiet, I would hear them, the whispers, faint and distant, but unmistakable, a chorus of voices calling out to me from the depths of the garden. "Come back. Join us." The words were relentless, filling my mind with images of the twisted, dark place I had barely escaped. And yet, even as I felt the fear building, a strange part of me, a part I couldn't understand, felt drawn. I knew the garden was dangerous, a living nightmare that would consume me if I gave in. But at the same time, there was a strange allure, a dark curiosity that gnawed at me, whispering that there was more to see, more to understand. It was as though a seed had been planted in my mind, a dark, insidious thought that grew with each passing day. The garden had left its mark on me, a silent reminder of its power, its reach. And no matter how hard I tried to shake it, I couldn't escape the feeling that it was calling me back. Weeks passed. The garden remained a distant memory, but its influence had taken root, spreading through my thoughts like a creeping vine. I found myself obsessing over it, replaying every moment, every vision, every word the figure had spoken. I began to question everything I'd seen, wondering if it was all real, or if the garden had twisted my mind, planted dark thoughts that would fester and grow until they consumed me. And then, one day, as I sat in the ship, staring out at the barren landscape, I felt a faint, pulsing sensation in my chest, a heartbeat that wasn't my own, a rhythm that seemed to echo the whispers I'd heard in the garden. The realization hit me like a shock of ice water. The garden had left something behind, something dark and insidious that had taken root within me. I could feel it now, pulsing in time with my own heartbeat, a dark, growing presence that filled me with a sense of dread. I looked down at my hands, trembling, my skin pale and clammy. The whispers were back, louder now, filling my mind with dark promises, urging me to return, to embrace the darkness, to become part of something greater. I wanted to fight it, to reject the pull of the garden, to escape its grasp once and for all. But I knew that it was too late. The garden had claimed me, marked me, and no matter how far I ran, I could never truly escape its grasp. I was its creation now, a part of its twisted, dark world. And even as I tried to resist, to hold on to some shred of my humanity, I knew that it was only a matter of time before I succumbed, before I became one with the garden, a silent, watchful thing that lurked in the shadows, waiting for the next soul to wander into its dark embrace. The last entry in the ship's log is brief, almost hurried, as though written by someone who knew their time was running out. If anyone finds this, if anyone reads these words, know that the garden is real, and it is waiting. It calls to us, draws us in, feeds on our fear, our curiosity, our darkest desires, and once it has you, it never lets go. I tried to resist. I tried to escape. but the garden is eternal, and it will consume all who come here, all who seek to bend it to their will. If you value your life, if you value your sanity, stay away. Do not enter the garden. Do not let it take root in your mind. The entry ends with a single, haunting sentence, a final warning to anyone who dares to follow in my footsteps. What humans call a garden, the galaxy calls a nightmare. And with that, the story of the garden ends, a dark, cautionary tale of humanity's ambition, of our desire to control, to reshape the universe in our image. The garden waits, silent and watchful, a dark reminder of the dangers that lurk in the unknown, of the horrors that lie in wait for those who dare to push too far, to reach too deep into the void. In the end, it is a place of darkness, a place of nightmares, a place that will consume all who come here, all who seek to unravel its secrets. And it will wait, patient and eternal, a silent, watchful thing that lurks in the shadows, waiting for the next soul to wander into its dark embrace. The crew found my ship drifting on the edge of known space, its lights dimmed, systems operating on minimal power. They boarded cautiously, weapons drawn, expecting a horror that would match the ship's eerie silence. My last log was all they found. They never located me. Rumors circulated in the outer reaches, stories of a derelict ship whose last occupant left cryptic messages about a nightmare disguised as a garden. The galaxy heard the whispers, half believing, half dismissing them as the delirium of a lost soul. But the name spread, like an old myth come to life, the Garden of Shadows, the garden that breathes. Places like that were whispered of only in the quiet of darkened ship halls and campfires. Those who stumbled upon the garden often didn't return. Those who did spoke of its allure, of an indescribable beauty that hid a malevolent presence, something ancient, unrelenting, lying in wait. They spoke of strange visions, of voices that whispered in their sleep, of plants that seemed to pulse with an unnatural vitality. They spoke of a darkness that clung to them long after they had left, a feeling that something had followed them back into the stars. Some of them swore they felt it, even in the far reaches of civilization, a heartbeat that wasn't theirs, a rhythm that echoed the garden's dark promises. Humanity's relentless drive pushed onward, but something had changed. There were corners of the galaxy that were left untouched, planets that once had been prime targets for colonization, but which now lay silent and undisturbed, left as shrines to something the bravest among us dared not disturb. A phrase was etched into memory, shared in hushed tones, a warning to all who sought to conquer the unknown. What humans call a garden, the galaxy calls a nightmare. In the years that followed, scholars and explorers would seek the garden, driven by curiosity, by ambition, by a desire to conquer what they did not understand. Some thought it a myth, a tale concocted to inspire fear, to impose limits on humanity's expansion. Others thought it a place of knowledge, a garden whose secrets held the key to untold power. But none who found it ever returned unchanged. In the end, the garden became legend, a symbol of the boundaries humanity was wise not to cross. And while the galaxy moved on, continuing its march toward the stars, the garden waited, silent and eternal, watching from the shadows, a dark presence that lay dormant, waiting for the next soul who dared to step beyond the edge of reason. Some say that, if you listen closely, you can still hear the whispers, drifting through the void, a faint echo of the voices that were consumed by the darkness. The garden endures, and it will continue to endure, waiting, watching, reaching out from the depths to those who are foolish enough to answer its call.